Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update, and all eyes this week were on the Reserve Bank, which met today and decided to cut interest rates by 0.25% to 3.85%, its second interest rate cut this year. The Reserve Bank's decision to cut interest rates will be welcomed by many Australians, including the re-elected Albanese government, and clearly have a significant impact on Roy Morgan's key weekly indicators next week. Although the federal election was held more than 2 weeks ago, final votes were only received last Friday and counting continues. The seat of Bradfield was awarded to independent Nicolette Buller yesterday in a tight victory over the Liberal candidate Giselle Kaptarian, although the final margin of under 40 votes is set to trigger an automatic recount, and other seats like Calwell are still undecided. Federal Senate results won't be known for a number of weeks. Nevertheless, these results don't take away from a comprehensive ALP victory, likely the largest since World War II. In further good news for the re-elected Labor government, consumer confidence, ANZ Roy Morgan consumer confidence has increased for a third straight week, up 0.5 points to 88.8. likely in anticipation of a positive result from today's Reserve Bank meeting. Consumer confidence before today's Reserve Bank decision was at its highest since late February, just after the Reserve Bank last cut interest rates. And one of the key drivers of this week's increase was more positive sentiment about the performance of the Australian economy over the next 12 months, which increased by a net 3 percentage points. ANZ Roy Morgan inflation expectations were unchanged at 4.5% this week before the Reserve Bank meeting, so Australians now expect inflation of 4.5% over each of the next 2 years, the lowest inflation expectations have been since the Reserve Bank cut interest rates in late February. Inflation expectations have dropped sharply after spiking to a high of 5.1% in April after US President Donald Trump's Liberation Day announcement of worldwide tariffs. Since then, Trump has proceeded to suspend the introduction of many of those tariffs and start cutting deals with key trading partners to lower tariffs. Looking longer term, inflation expectations have been on a steady downward track over the last few years, since hitting a high of 6.8% in late 2022. The downward pressure on inflation is clearly highlighted by the sustained fall in petrol prices. Average retail petrol prices in Australia were down to only $1.70 per litre last week, the lowest since September 2022, nearly 3 years ago. Prior to early 2022 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which spiked energy prices worldwide, petrol prices have rarely been above that level. The reduction in petrol prices is a key factor in the reduction in inflation pressures over the last year, with average retail petrol prices dropping from more than $2 per litre a year ago and falling consistently since a recent high of $1.89 per litre around Christmas time last year. Despite the fall, this week marked 139 weeks when petrol prices were at least $1.70 per litre. Finally, the latest Roy Morgan Readership figures for the 12 months to March 2025 released yesterday. These figures show news matters, especially in a crucial time like the intense federal election campaign of the last few weeks. Now, 98% of Australians, an estimated 22.4 million, consume news in any given month, either in papers or digitally via online outlets or apps. The most widely read category of news remains the general news category, with a unique audience, or read by, 22 million Australians. That's equivalent of 96% of the population aged 14 plus. Property continues to be highly popular, with more than 2/3 of Australians, 70%, turning to the property section, the second most popular overall. In third place is sport, read by 13.8 million Australians, or 61% of the population, followed by entertainment and culture on 12.7, Lifestyle and Health on 12.2 million, and Business and Finance read by 10.6 million. The latest Roy Morgan figures on magazine readership released today show more than 14.9 million Australians read magazines either in print or online. The two most widely read magazines are the Coles magazine with a readership of over 5 million Australians and Fresh Ideas from Woolworths with a readership of almost 5 million. The most widely read paid magazines are Better Homes and Gardens with a readership of over 1.7 million, the Australian Woman's Weekly with a readership of almost 1.2 million, and National Geographic with a readership of just over 1 million readers. For detailed information on the latest Roy Morgan readership figures for magazines and newspapers and the Think News Brands analysis, visit the Roy Morgan website. Thanks for your interest in Roy Morgan's latest results, and I'll be back next week to bring you the latest results on consumer confidence, inflation expectations, and we'll be looking at mortgage stress. Thanks for listening.